Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this totally unplanned, totally impromptu live stream rant and sort of discussion about things. Because when you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are. Anything your heart desires will come to you. Sort of, kind of, except not, because otherwise I wouldn't be doing this. Because I'm kind of happy. I don't really want to be, but I'm kind of happy. So this stream isn't so much about the story in front of me here, but it did, let's say, trigger a couple of thoughts or two. So let's go over the story real quick, the basics, and then I'll get into the meat of why I am here. Strange World could be a historic box office bomb for Disney after opening weekend flop. Walt Disney Animation Studios' Strange World is shaping up to be a historic box office bomb for Disney and drawing comparisons to the 2002 flop Treasure Planet, even though Treasure Planet is actually kind of good on reflection. Here are the latest box office figures. Disney has typically had a successful track record with releasing family-friendly films during the extended Thanksgiving holiday weekend, but Walt Disney Animation Studios' Strange World is shaping up to be one of the biggest bombs in the history of the studio's founding division. The animated feature debuted with just $11.9 million across North American theaters over the weekend and just $18.6 million over the 5-day holiday frame. This is an even lower opening than original projections, which estimated earnings of $30 to $40 million between Wednesday and Sunday. Strange World also failed to capture international audiences as it earned just $9.2 million from 43 markets for a global start of $27.8 million. The film was not released in China or Russia due to geopolitical tensions. Let's see. With a $180 million production budget, Strange World is shaping up to be one of the biggest box bombs in Disney's history. Industry sources believe that with global marketing and distribution fees added in, Strange World would need to earn roughly $360 million just to break even. And if its first opening holiday weekend only gained it about we'll be generous and say $19 million, and things are likely to drop off from now onward, the likelihood that it's going to earn over $360 million, especially without the Chinese market, not good. Not good. But I'm not here specifically to talk about this, because that's just the facts of the matter on the numbers. I'm not even going to talk about the movie. I haven't seen the movie. Don't know anything about it. What I want to talk about is how I'm actually glad this happened. And I'll tell you why in a second. Thank you so much again, Derek LaRue, for the donation with no comment. Thank you so much. I appreciate that very much. Appreciate your generosity. Just for that, I'm going to give you a dog cat fox.
Wowee, wow, wow.
Yeah, the most enthusiastic dog cat fox you'll ever find. From my friend, Irate Alex. Thank you, Derek. So I'm glad. Not just for this, but I'm glad that Disney apparently is just imploding. You may or may not know or care about the behind-the-scenes corporate politics of these things, but I hear about them and I find them fascinating, always have. The CEO of Disney was summarily replaced this past week with the previous CEO. The reasons behind that are varied and many, depending on who you ask. There's not really any disclosure sort of publicly yet as to why. There are many conspiracy theories. One has to do with Bob Chapek, the now ousted CEO, pushing back too hard against certain ideological forces within the company. There's also a theory that there is a major financial meltdown taking place behind closed doors at Disney. And as a consequence of that, the CEO was ousted to try to cover people's rear ends. I don't know the reasons. All I do know is over the last 15 years or so, has it been 15 years? Yeah, thereabouts. Let's say at least the last 10. Disney has summarily destroyed elements of not only our pop culture, but of my childhood. And I know you're going to say, oh, you whiny man baby clinging to your silly toys and your comic books and everything else. Well, I hate to tell people this. Actually, I don't hate to tell people this. I take that back. See, not to sound too much of a hipster, but I was into all this stuff before it was cool. And that really means something back when being into this kind of stuff didn't make you popular, and in fact made you a pariah, if not a total exile from social contact growing up. Being into comic books, being into Star Wars, sci-fi, these things, this was not something that was a very attractive element to a lot of people socially. But I didn't care because I liked what I liked, and I appreciated it for what it was, even with its imperfections, because it was like being part of a private club. Right? Because back then, back in the olden days of the 80s and the 90s, you were in kind of a niche audience if you knew a lot about the origins of the Punisher, or you had an encyclopedia's worth of information on Star Wars stuck up in your head after reading the Timothy Zahn novels and the Kevin Anderson novels, and God knows how many other things. Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina, Tales of the Bounty Hunters. These little anthology books filled my mind with the possibilities of the Star Wars universe, role-playing games based on these things. Oh, all over the place. And here's the thing. I want to speak real quick about Star Wars in particular. I liked Star Wars even when it was bad Star Wars. And what I mean by that is there was an understanding from my perspective when a new Star Wars novel came out. It's like, okay, if it's good, good. Because it was really hard to beat anything after the Timothy Zahn trilogy, right? The Timothy Zahn trilogy in the 90s was pitch perfect continuation of the Star Wars movies and story. And everything that grew out of that, all the West End games, role-playing supplements that expanded the universe in a both technical and cultural way beyond anything anybody could do in a single novel, from every novel that came out in, like every entry from the Star Wars novels, I was like, okay, if it's good, good. If it's bad, it's still Star Wars, right? One of my biggest guilty pleasures in the Star Wars novel series is Darksaber. I believe it was written by Kevin J. Anderson. Darksaber is a stupid, stupid story about a minor Hutt crime lord who kidnaps the guy who designed the Death Star, not the guy that appeared in Rogue One. I'll talk about that in a minute, but the original guy, and forced him to build this crime lord a mini version of the Death Star, but he could only afford to build the super laser. And so the guy just designed a simple tube that held the super laser. And so when it fired, it looked like a lightsaber. So it was called the Darksaber. The whole story is ridiculous, but it is so lovingly ridiculous that even though it's bad Star Wars, it's still Star Wars. And the thing about the novels and everything, you could ignore an individual novel and still enjoy the rest of the universe, you know, because oftentimes these things were done by people who either they hit it out of the park or they did something silly and the story didn't quite work. But it didn't ruin anything. It didn't say what came before didn't happen. It didn't kill off anybody so important that you'd never see them again until you get to that part where they killed off Chewbacca in the novel series, but that's different. That was the understanding about Star Wars. We didn't mind the inconsistencies sometimes. We didn't mind the minor continuity issues or the questions of how does this fit into that, because you could kind of just shrug it off because it wasn't trying to destroy what came before. It was, even in its awkward way, honoring what came before and building off of it, trying to expand the universe, the expanded universe, the EU. And what's the first thing upon purchasing Star Wars that Disney does? Vetoes all of it. That was the first gut punch to me. Because I was excited. I thought, oh my gosh, you know, Disney's going to buy Star Wars. That means that they'll have the studios and the resources and the reach, and oh, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. And the first thing they did was say, hey, you know all those novels, comic books, role-playing games, you know all that stuff that's actually built up the franchise beyond the first original films and even the prequel trilogy? You know all that stuff that made Star Wars the brand worth buying doesn't count anymore. It's not real. We're going to put in our own continuity. I swear, when I heard that was the case, I honestly felt a little physically ill because my whole head was filled with all of this, gobbledygook but lovingly created continuity of a universe and characters and events and everything. And it was a language. It was a language you could speak to another person with and know whether they were part of that, little subculture of total geeks and nerds. You could geek out on something and debate the merits of this novel or that character, or would this character be able to do that, this, that, and the other thing, or this movie to that novel, whatever. And they took that all away. They didn't just decide to reset the brand. Okay. As far as I was concerned, they stole an entire language from a generation of people and generations to come, conceivably, that could share in this grand mess that was the Star Wars universe that had been built up over those, 2 decades prior to their purchase of it, or almost 30 years since the Thrawn novels. And so, but I said to myself, okay, all right, I was loyal to Star Wars. Like, okay, well, I'll wait and see what they do. I will do my best to take on this new continuity. I will do my best to try to become a fan. I will do my best. And so I purchased the visual novel, the visual encyclopedia for The Force Awakens before the movie came out. Okay, and the visual encyclopedias for Star Wars prior to the Disney takeover were always really interesting. They had technical descriptions of the ships, and they had all this backstory on the lightsabers, and they, the people that made those things went deep into the lore to create something that was actually informative and expanded your understanding of the relationships between things. And it was total nerd stuff, and it was a lot of member berries, but again, it was done with respect to and an expanding on what already came before, with love and respect. So I bought the visual encyclopedia for The Force Awakens, and I started reading up on the First Order and Kylo Ren and these criminal organizations that they mention and all this stuff. And I was looking at the visuals and everything, and it all felt fake. It all felt like something someone who had Star Wars described to them would make up, who hadn't paid attention to Star Wars their entire life. That's what it felt like. And I know it's completely subjective, but that's, as I read that thing and I read through all this stuff, and I'm trying to not have the information and the knowledge and the lore in my head overlap and collide with this new stuff, and trying to rectify it all together. I tried really hard. It's like, okay, First Order. I mean, really, the thing that's going to get me is the bad guys. Okay, the bad guys got to be good. If the bad guys aren't good, yeah. And then I saw the movie. Kylo Ren throwing a tantrum and taking off his mask. And they killed off Han. And there was no arc. And Finn got sidelined. I mean, the first 10, 15 minutes, I was enthralled. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be so cool. What's going to happen with this stormtrooper? And then I started thinking about the politics of things and how any of this would work, and where did they get those ships, and how the heck did the New Republic not take into consideration the fact that a whole new empire was being built up around them, and they didn't care that Princess Leia was having to go on her own to convince the New Republic that a bunch of triangular shaped giant starships and guys in white stormtrooper armor were a threat. And so slowly, and especially after The Last Jedi, I stopped very quickly, stopped caring about Star Wars. I never thought I'd see the day. My interest and my passion would, ebb and flow over the years. I get really into it one day and then, set it aside because I knew it would still be there. when my attention or my enthusiasm came back, if whatever I was interested in today faded away, it would always be behind me. It would always be right there. A good old friend I could lean on. My knowledge about the franchise, my knowledge about the characters would remain valid, right? It remained valid because it hadn't changed. It was still a mess, but it hadn't changed. But Disney just deleted all that. They just deleted all that. And then what did I have? As far as my love for this franchise, it was gone. Disney said, I don't care what you did, what you felt that turned this property into something that we were willing to pay billions of dollars for. We've got it now, and it's ours. And we're going to take it and turn it into something that you can't recognize for a new generation, a better generation, a smarter generation, a more open, wiser generation. Somehow, that hasn't been working out for them. Same thing with Marvel. The Iron Man movie, the phase 1, all the way up through about, I'd say, Endgame's not the worst movie ever, but certainly Infinity War was a much better Marvel movie, a much better culmination of the previous films. After Endgame, boy, oh boy, I have been increasingly less excited project after project coming from Marvel. It used to be that I had to be there day one release for a Marvel film. I had to be there, right? It was a badge of honor in my mind. It was a celebration of something I grew up with, a celebration of something that I stuck with and never lost my passion for, even throughout my childhood, even throughout all the bullying and the belittling and the ostracizing, all of it. When I went to see Iron Man in the theater and I saw it, I saw that story done with love and respect for the source material. And see, I own a copy of the very first appearance of Iron Man. I inherited this from my father. I got a stack of old comic books from my grandpa that used to belong to my dad when I was a kid. And amongst that stack was Tales of Suspense number 39, first appearance of Iron Man. I still have it. It's locked up in a Mylar box, basically in a vault somewhere, or maybe it's just in my desk drawer. I don't know. Either way, I still have that. And I knew that story inside and out, that original story. And so when I saw those same characters, those same scenarios done with love and respect on the screen, I felt vindicated. Here it is. This story, this character being done justice. And just about every film in the first phase of the Marvel stuff, for as much as I knew about some of the characters, I wasn't a huge Thor fan, and I thought the movie was all right. But for the most part, it was like you gave these things to people who at least understood the material and had respect for the characters. And every single movie that came out, I had to be there first day. I had to know that I was there to see it. No spoilers, had my first impressions, wanted to find out what happened next, couldn't wait to see what the next installment would bring. And that's pretty much gone by the wayside. I don't even bother. I don't even bother anymore. Because they don't care. And they just want to spit in the face of the people who made these things what they are, or what they were, made them into the things worth buying, worth paying billions of dollars for. And so now, every time that Disney has some sort of failing, some sort of falling out, some sort of crisis, because their High Republic books aren't selling, or the video game adaptation of this is in development hell, or they have some sort of like personnel shakeup, or the CEO suddenly gets fired, or they have some giant flop in a TV series or in a movie, whatever it is, whether it's Marvel, Star Wars, or otherwise, I just think to myself, well, the chickens are coming home to roost. And I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad. I don't know what else to say. And I know it doesn't matter. Obviously, my opinion doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to them. Hasn't mattered to them since, well, before they bought the things that I love. And all I can say to myself is, well, I still have the comic books. I still have the novels. The movies that I grew up on still exist and everything else. But at the same time, the fact that everything that's going to come after and everything that's been done, said, or otherwise, or retconned about them in the meantime, it's still it robs me of my enthusiasm. It robs me of my passion because what I love has been sullied, by people who think that they're better than everybody who loved this stuff before they even showed up. And I just can't get excited about it anymore. I think back to college. I ran a 9-person tabletop RPG in college, as in 9 players. This was all in the lead up to Attack of the Clones. We were so excited for the next Star Wars movie. We rewatched the Darth Maul, Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi fight sequence before every session of this game to get ourselves pumped up. And I managed 9 people, 9 different characters in various lines of plot. It was, to this day, I do not know how I did it, but everybody enjoyed it. Everybody had fun, and everybody was looking forward to the next session. This went on for like 2 months. I think back to that. I don't even know how I did it. I'm proud of it. I wouldn't do that today because I wouldn't know what to do. I wouldn't know what to do. I wouldn't know what story to tell. That wouldn't just remind me of what's been, taken over with. Or what nonsense they tried to shoehorn into it. Or what politics they decided to add to this character, that planet, this scenario, how they decide to redefine the force or the powers and da-da-da-da-da-da. It's just... So when I see that Disney may lose, amongst other things, some $100 million or more on a flop project, whatever the cause. I mean, there are a lot of people who have a lot of theories. It was the lack of marketing. It was the content itself. It was all the, simps on Twitter that said this or said that. I don't really care. I just see it as this is a kind of, well, you guys just spent the better part of the last 15 years telling anybody and everybody that you don't care as long as you get your message across. You don't care about entertaining people. You don't care about honoring established and iconic franchises. You don't care about celebrating the things that we came to celebrate with you. This is the thing. I wanted Disney to be a nerd with me, right? Like, I imagine, I didn't know all the politics and all of the bureaucracy in between and all the corporate executives at the time, but I thought to myself, man, if I was running Disney, I'd buy Marvel, right? I'd buy Star Wars. If George Lucas was willing to sell Star Wars, I'd want to make sure that I was the one who curated it, who shepherded it, who was a caretaker for it. I'd say, George, where do you want to go and what do you want to do? And how can we preserve this for the long term? How can I share my passion for this thing with the rest of the world using the resources of Disney? That's what I thought. I thought, oh my gosh, same thing for Marvel. Oh, how could you better enshrine some of these things in perpetuity than with the reach of Disney? Oh my gosh. But I was naive. I was idealistic. I thought Disney wanted to be a nerd with me. No, they wanted to be the high school bully telling me that I'm the nerd, that I'm on the outs, that nerd is a slur again. That's what it turned into. And that's why when I hear stories about what happened with Strange Worlds or the audience numbers for Andor or any of the several dozen other things, I can't help but feel like you had it coming. But it's done with such a sigh in my voice because all of that failure comes at the cost of, again, damaging those things and missing out on opportunities for the stuff that I love. Like, it's just, yeah. Anyway, that's my rant. That's what I wanted to talk about for a few minutes before I have to head off to Slumberland. But I'll take a second here and go over what you guys... Shadow Sonata, I would have made the last 3 Star Wars movies a real end, reforming the Republican Jedi Order plus the impending return of the Yuuzhan Vong. I would have left the EU as it was alone, and I would have told a story that was 100 years in the future that would separate itself from all the other Star Wars stuff and leave it, enshrine it, say that's the past, it's set, and we're going to do a continuation onward with a new set of characters and a new situation and try something new. I think the EU deserve that kind of respect and leave enough room to have some sort of resolution. But I wouldn't do it with the movie series. You know, if I was going to do a wrap up in some way, or give Luke Skywalker and Leia and Han one last hurrah, I would have made that a TV special, right? Like maybe a two-parter extended TV special kind of thing. Now, something really focused and something really unique. Not try to dilute those characters or their ride off into the sunset with a movie trilogy, because there'd be too much going on. I would have had something very focused and very respectful of those characters. That's what I would have done. Snubber, thank you so much. Problem is they won't learn, and they'll make up the difference with products, marketing, and outrage. Yeah, well, we'll see how much that gets them in the box office and in the wallet in the long term. Eventually, the shareholders are not going to put up with it. Eventually, the shareholders are going to say, no, we're getting no return on these investments. And the cold equations of return on investment will do. It might take a while. They might convince themselves that the audience is the ones who are wrong until they go broke. But it's going to come. It's going to come home eventually. They can't argue with the numbers, right? And the shareholders aren't going to put up with it forever. Bishop, internet. Only hardcore nerds understand how it works. We took over the world, then we got took over by communists. Now ideology, social justice, everybody thinking that they have the better idea when, like, hey, let's take this established thing that's worked and been popular for 30, 40, 50 years. Hey, we know better. We know better. We're not going to build on what came before. We're going to tear it down and make something new. That's always the thing. We got to tear down these ancient structures of oppression and this, that, and the other. You're like, oh, good Lord. Good Lord. Septus Wolf. The Incredibles makes fun of the woke crap as it was just starting. Even showed how screwed up things can get. Yeah. Incredibles, yeah. Pixar, like I said, Disney, Pixar, it used to be different. It used to be a little bit different. People had a sense of humor. People had a sense of irony and self-reflection. Yeah, you can't see that so much. Not so much. Not so much. Let's see. Who else is here, by the way? Ebony Williams, Spud Gun, Payar D. Bayar, Dr. Metalblood. Let's see. And Ebony said, if She-Hulk has taught us anything, is that the current writers don't care about the fans or the source material. Yeah. But moreover, the people hiring the writers don't care about the fans of the source material. They don't require any of that from the writers ahead of these projects. And I've said it before, and I brought up the example. Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan, right? And if I'm a little off here, forgive me, but I believe the director, who also I think rewrote the script or had some hand in writing the script, he came into the project not knowing much of anything about Star Trek, not really being a fan at all. But what did he do? He went in and he watched every Star Trek episode he could get his hands on. He studied the characters, the lore, everything in its sideways. He made himself into a fan, if only to do that project justice, right? So I don't understand. It never makes any sense to me why you would bring somebody on to handle an iconic character, franchise, whatever, and not demand of them, require of them that if they are not a fan of the material when they come in, and you don't necessarily have to be, that they take the time and effort to become one, to become knowledgeable, to fall in love with the world this character, this franchise inhabits, if only for the duration of the project. If you want to go back to whatever you're doing afterwards, fine, but you're making this for people who love this. So for now, you have to love it too. Is that so much to ask? Is that even like a crazy idea? It just boggles me. And what did Star Trek II turn into? Arguably one of the best Star Trek films and stories ever made. And by a guy who wasn't even a fan. but he went to the effort to become one. Is that beyond the ken of modern writers? Is that outside the wheelhouse for producers and executives to require of the people they hire to take on these projects? Apparently so. Now, thank you, Ministry of Wrong Thing. You see Midnight's Edge video about Disney allegedly being burned by a financial involvement with FTX? Yeah, I sort of sidewise mentioned that earlier. Kamran Pasha's theory, according to both his assessment of the situation, I think you can find this video over on as the Ministry says over on Midnight's Edge channel, which I highly recommend. If you're interested in any of this stuff, especially the corporate movements of things, Midnight's Edge, creme de la creme, as far as I'm concerned. There is some rumblings to say that the ouster of Bob Chapek as CEO coincided very suspiciously with the sudden fall of FTX. There is information or suspicion that Disney had leveraged itself in some major way into an FTX investment, and then it all went kablooey. And the fallout from that has led to a chain of dominoes leading up to what's happening now behind the scenes. Whether that's true or not, whether Disney is about to be purchased by somebody, which would be incredible, time will tell. But yeah, so go check out Midnight's Edge. Thank you, Ministry. Appreciate it. Let's see. Anybody else here? I didn't want to go on too long, just maybe half an hour or so just before bedtime. Let's see. Bishop, I think referring back to my GMing time. I did that Game Masters Guild in Waukegan, Illinois. D&D, GURPS, Tabletop Mech Warrior. Yeah, this was D20 Star Wars when Wizards of the Coast had the license. And I think I was using second ed. I was using second edition with I had to use first edition because I don't think the second edition came out until just before Attack of the Clones, because they were releasing that to coincide. So the cover that has Attack of the Clones Anakin on it, that's the book that I primarily used back in the olden days. I think I still have my copy somewhere in my giant library of RPG books. Someday I'm going to have to take a picture of my collection of RPG books. It's pretty crazy. I actually have, for those of you that are real nerds, I have a first edition copy of Vampire the Masquerade first edition, like when it was paper and not hardcover, and it's in mint condition. It was like stuck in the back of some warehouse of some bookstore that a friend of mine found and was like, "Hey, I found this. Would you want it?" And like, yeah, I'll take that. Even though the rules are ridiculous, the art isn't that great, and it's obviously, sort of a first run draft of the whole thing. So I've got that. I got Vampire the Masquerade books out the wazoo. I got a whole bunch of Delta Green, Arkham Publishing, Call of Cthulhu stuff. Good Lord, what else? I got stuff all over. I got all types of stuff. Anyway, but they took that over too. The woke agenda took over Vampire the Masquerade. Everything since the 20th anniversary edition has just gone absolutely to pot. I don't even know. Jeanette E. Hellis. Yeah, at this point, I'm worried about Disney. Bob Iger got rehired for 2 years, and they got rid of the other Bob. Disney is having some problems. Major problems. I am not the expert that the guys over at Midnight's Edge are, who have inside sources and know the industry much better than I do. The decisions Disney has been making, and just the patently stupid things that have been coming out of there. Like the executive from Disney or whatever the other day said he specifically doesn't look for people to write for these shows who are fans. That's a red flag. He wants somebody who's going to come to the material cold or something. Like, well, I think I see your problem. I think I see why you're failing left, right, and center. Why can't you see it? Now, Obi-Wan Kenobi was the greatest show ever. No, it wasn't. It was god-awful. She-Hulk wasn't a revelation. It was a revulsion. And I fear, it's not even out yet, I fear what's going to happen to Daredevil. Thank goodness we have the Netflix version. Although I'll tell you what, if you can find a copy of Netflix Daredevil on hard media, like DVDs, Blu-rays or something, I don't even know if you can find them anymore, but if you can, snap it up. Snap it up. It might be the last time you ever have a quality Marvel show And who knows what Disney Plus might do to it in the future, or if Disney gets bought, what'll happen to it? Oh, man. Physical media. Big movement for physical media, and I don't blame them. Keeverdam, Scribeblade, does he look for people with diversity indicators? Yeah, diversity indicators. There's probably a checklist. I wouldn't be surprised if there's an internal checklist at Disney. If Allstate has a scorecard, right? If there are diversity indicators being advised by hiring managers or consultants, yeah, I don't know. And let's see. Yvonne Solomon, God, don't remind me what they did to Daredevil. Oh, for She-Hulk? Yeah, if that portends what is to come with Daredevil, it's a sad day. Like I say, we still have the Netflix version. It's still awesome. You can watch it all by itself. And it's actually a good thing it's not connected to any other Marvel property in any direct way, because it can exist as its own thing. And you can ignore everything else, thankfully. Although, man, I don't even know what this Disney's going to do with Punisher. Oh, Lord. And Jeanette again, I want Disney to do better for themselves and for everybody. All the stuff they've been coming out with, I just feel bad that only one out of a couple of movies will do well. This is the thing. I wanted Disney to do well. I wanted them to do right by these properties. I wanted them to succeed because success breeds more stuff I like. If they make stuff I like and the stuff that I like does well, more stuff like that will be made. It's called supply and demand. And they haven't. And it ticks me off. I feel happy for DC fans. I am not a DC fan. I'm not a DC, opponent by any stretch of the imagination, but I grew up with Marvel. And when I see that James Gunn and Henry Cavill and all these guys over working for Warner right now and pumping up DC properties and really showing that they at least give a rip about what they're doing. When I see Henry Cavill come out saying, people who don't appreciate the source material, I have a real hard time with those guys. And when Superman comes back, he's going to be about joy and honor and happiness and all these other things. I'm thinking, at least they're in the hands of people who care. And I am so happy for DC fans. I really hope, and I might not be the first to run out and see them because I'm not as well versed in some of those characters and universes, but I'll be happy to see something come out that DC fans really can enjoy and embrace, and legitimately so, not for clout, not for social justice points, but because they actually see the characters and scenarios they love on the screen being made by people that love those things to begin with. So anyway, everybody, apologies if I didn't get to your comment. Please comment in the comment section below and let me know what you think about this. Leave a like on your way out if you would. I'd appreciate it. Thank you for showing up for this impromptu little rant of mine. Just me venting. Got inspired by Schadenfreude, as the title suggests. If you'd like to hear more from me, save for those chances where I decide to do a random stream, you can find me here regularly Thursday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for TED Excellence, where I'll once again go over an off-brand TED Talk for information and education. I call it Edumagician. Everybody, thank you for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. Everybody who donated to me, thank you so much for your generosity. I really, really do appreciate it. Everybody, have a good rest of your Sunday night. Hope your Monday is not too rough. Hope the rest of your week goes well. I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I will see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.